Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast at RE. We are recording live from the Power Up Lives Pro Studio presented by TerraHive. Thanks to RE Plus and Suncast Media for hosting us. So today, our extra triple, quadruple, what's beyond that, Bill? I don't know, but our extra triple, quadruple special guest is Bill Brooks. The one, the only. I think there's another Bill Brooks out there, though, that writes Western books or something. I think I saw that once.
There are a lot of Bill Brookses out there, actually, but in the solar world, not so much.
Okay, yeah. And I'm with the best Bill Brooks ever right here. And we just taught a class that was really cool yesterday. And a lot of people showed up. It was our best turnout since I think they canceled 3 SPI RE Pluses in a row, something like that, because of COVID. And then we had a really big one over in Anaheim. It was like 200 people, something like that.
Yeah, there was a big crowd after that.
Nice big NEC class. And then our next biggest one was yesterday.
Yep.
So congratulations. So what we wanted to talk about today is one of Bill's very good friends, Gino Espino, who I know from going sailing with. He's a really cool guy. Unexpectedly passed away, and I know that he knows Bill from different worlds, from the solar world and personal world, like a good friend in Bill's town in Vacaville. So maybe you could let everybody know about John.
Yeah, I've known John for at least 20 years, maybe 25, something like that. Our families worked together as in homeschooling of all things, if that's even allowed to be said.
And we'll allow that.
Okay, good. But so, yeah, we knew each other. I watched their kids grow up. They watched our kids grow up. And so still in very close communication with them. And he's a close friend, and just unexpectedly out of the blue, passed away at night. I was, very unfortunate, and it kind of feels a little weird this time. I mean, when we go to these conferences, he was always a pretty big fixture, kind of a larger-than-life personality, in the marketing world, very, very connected, talking to everybody, knew everybody, talked to everybody, much more than I do. I'm more of a technical guy, and I recognize faces, and a lot of people know who I am because I've written things or done trainings. But he actually knew and connected with thousands and thousands of people, and him not being here, you can, it just feels like there's a little bit of a void, and we'll certainly miss him. But life goes on, and we keep plugging away and remember the good things that he brought to the solar industry. Is his energy. Everybody understood that. He was a very energetic guy, very positive guy, very upbeat. You try to take some of those things and emulate those as you can.
Yeah. When I saw on LinkedIn that he passed away, I couldn't believe it because I had just seen him not too much earlier at RE Plus in Texas, and he was doing selfies with me and stuff, and then he didn't seem ill or anything at all. So it was kind of sad.
Yeah, the number of people that I talked to that either directly talked to him over the phone or texted him the last 2 days of his life, Friday and Saturday, before he passed away that Saturday night. Probably 60 people that he connected with the last 2 days of his life. So I don't know whether he knew something was happening. No. He didn't know anything was happening, but it was just really unique to see that many people had connected with him before he passed. And, one of the things was I got a chance to go to North Dakota, which is the second to last state that I've never been to. My last state is Alaska, which you've been to many times, of course, with your brother living there. And, but I knew I was never going to get to North Dakota unless I went with him. And so his sons play ball for Minot State. And so that was it was a great time. I get on my own to just fly up there by myself and hang out with him and his family. And it's one of those things, if you don't seize the day, I would be very, very upset with myself if I hadn't have done that. Mm-hmm. And then actually we planned to go to Alaska together, to the RE Plus in Alaska, coming up in next month, and I had already made my flight arrangements and everything like that before he passed. So we were already planning to do that together. We were going to basically be on the same plane, so we would cross the line together because it would have been his last state as well. But that wasn't to be, and so I'm going anyway, and to his memory.
Great. And Is it a coincidence that both of you were in the solar industry and knew each other such a long time ago?
To some extent, he was we had some, I guess, similar friends that were in the business. So, touch with another guy in the marketing world who was a close friend of his. And that was really more of his connection. He knew I was in the solar industry, and we did talk about it from time to time. He was at that time in the mortgage industry and stuff like that. And this was before the downturn of the real estate market and everything like that in 2008 timeframe. So, I was pretty well known in personal circles as the solar guy. They didn't know anything about what I did beyond my little town. But,
Cowtown.
He does solar. So, it's like, I got a friend of mine interested in solar. You should talk to Bill, and that's kind of the extent of it. But then our common friend basically kind of pulled him into working with some companies. And then, he just kind of, as he does, he's a marketing machine, and started connecting and got involved with a lot of startup companies. I accused him of, really being a glutton for punishment, because he was good at that. I mean, he was good at setting up marketing networks and getting things started for companies and really launching their marketing companies. And it seems like he would get to a certain point and then off to another challenge. So
I think you and him were even talking about starting a podcast, right?
Yeah, we talked about doing a podcast together. I mean, he had more of the energy to do that kind of thing. It's not something I was really, I was kind of peripherally interested in it, whatever, but not something I want to do as something. It's not really necessary to what I do in my work. And, I do writing and things like that, which helps keep my name out there, and do get involved in videos and things like that. Mike Holt podcasts, or Mike Holt's video series and stuff like that. And that certainly gets my name out there. But I'd say the vast majority of my work comes from expert witness kind of things nowadays. And even though I'm a well-known feature in the solar industry, there's not a ton of business that comes to me directly from even folks that are in this room here.
Yep. So what were some of the companies that John Espino was working for?
Wow, now you can ask me that. I can't remember. I know he worked for several data acquisition companies.
Or like in the solar industry, was it like?
Right. No, these were solar data acquisition companies. So, there were several companies that he worked with there. The last company he worked with over the last, say, 2 years was NEP. And so a lot of people knew him through NEP, and he really helped them quite a bit. And then he had just recently taken a job with a racking company out of Austria. And so he was new with them maybe 4 or 5 weeks when he passed. And so it was definitely, it was a big shock to them too as well. But yeah, so, he had, worked with a lot of different companies in a lot of different areas. It's kind of interesting that he did, data work. He worked with electronics companies. He worked with, and now racking was kind of his next thing. And so he was pretty well-rounded from all those things.
So I remember when we were out there sailing, and we were with John and his sons, and we were out on the bay, and we were joking a lot about getting canceled. And so like you and myself have been canceled. I kind of get in trouble. I get warmed up sometimes by listening to comedy, and, I turn on Dave Chappelle, and then somebody gets offended by something that I say, which I don't think was really too bad or anything like that. But we were out there on the bay, and we were joking a lot about that. And so maybe what we could informally do right now is make the John Gino Espino Uncancelled Award, and we can uncancel somebody every year at RE Plus in the name of John. Is that? You think he'll like that?
I think you would. I think you would. Yeah. Obviously, comedy has taken a big hit in the last 6 years or so, and comedy is intentionally supposed to be kind of offensive to everybody at some level. That's what makes it comedy.
Even educates that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It makes you look at yourself, and you can laugh at somebody else's situation, but get ready, because the comic should be coming after you next. And so when he says something, he's like, well, I guess I kind of resemble that remark, don't I? And, and obviously Dave Chappelle is the king of that kind of stuff, and he can get away with it. I mean, he, obviously, and people have tried to cancel him, and unsuccessfully so. And so, but yeah. I enjoy comedy. I know you do as well. And you try not to be offensive to people, but at some level, our culture has gotten very, very sensitive. So it's impossible not to offend people at some level. And that's unfortunate, because healthy people can always take a joke. Unhealthy people can't. And unfortunately, we got a lot of unhealthy people out there that just mentally are not and emotionally are not that healthy. And so, so it's unfortunate that occasionally I can't think of a lot of people that have been canceled in the solar industry. If I shared my views on a lot of things, I'd probably get canceled a lot more than I do. And maybe it's better that I don't do as much teaching as I used to because, people do get offended. But, because you're a trainer and I did a ton of training, long before you came along, the comedy routine is really a way to keep people engaged. Working with codes and standards and installation practices and design ideas and all that kind of stuff it's engaging to people that are really into it. But even, when you're teaching a class, whether it's a day long or 2 or 3 days long or a week long, that's an enormous amount of time to keep people engaged and a huge challenge. And you really can't do it consistently, but to the extent that you can kind of wake people up with things that, they can laugh about. Hopefully they can laugh about. And occasionally, it was funny, every time you do a class, you'd get your evaluations would come back. And of course, you're always focused on the negative evaluations, right? And you find somebody got butthurt.
1 out of 100 or.
Yeah, exactly. You get all these great things. Like, I know I'm great. I know I'm great, whatever.
You just said butthurt. I think you're canceled.
Oh, sorry.
So you're uncanceled in the name of John Espino.
That's right. So, somebody goes, well, he was very sexist about this. And it's like, it was obviously sexist. I mean, it was like over the top sexist. It was supposed to be super, duh, nobody would, say something like that. But, I took it seriously. And it's like, okay. I don't think any healthy person would have taken that seriously, actually. I'm sorry to hear that.
Life's too important to be taken seriously.
It is. It really is. And it's exactly right. And so, anyway, there's a lot, life should be fun. It should be interesting. It should be engaging. We should always be able to laugh at ourselves, and see the silliness in things that we do ourselves. And we always have room for improvement. So it's like, I don't have any problems with somebody says, well, I don't like the way you said that. Okay, well, maybe you can help me figure out a better way to say it. But the funny thing, I got people's attention. People woke up. Maybe they were shocked that I said that. It's like, okay. But I certainly didn't mean anything mean by it. I wasn't being, unnecessarily mean or taking people to task or anything like that. I do have my opinion. And that's the thing. You get very opinionated. And when you have your opinion, there are certain sectors of our world. I have lots of clients in the utility industry, and I dislike a lot of the way utility companies act.
Utility jokes.
Yeah, so there's utility jokes. And there's, I work with inspectors all the time, and there's a lot of funny things that inspectors do that I don't like, that is just funny, fun to make fun of. There are a lot of things that installers do. There's great installers, great friends of mine, and then there's guys that do shoddy work, and I'm going to give them a hard time, And so these are all things, they're opportunities to highlight in troubleshooting or in potential problems and things like that. And we can make fun of it without trying to overly shame, but we're trying to just point things out. And so we can do a really boring click, click, click PowerPoint or pictures of, well, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't do this. Instead, I turn it into a story. And then you build a story around, and then people remember that. And he's like, oh, I better not do that because that story was a really funny story. And it's like, that dude must have really been messed up when he did that day,
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Shaun White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Shaun White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Shaun White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
Yep. So,
I was talking to my favorite lesbian relative, and I was telling her how I got canceled from saying some jokes, and I told her the joke, and she's like, you know what? You didn't offend that person. They were offended for somebody else.
That's right.
They were trying to protect somebody else that didn't even really exist.
Exactly. I think that is a really good point. And probably only somebody like that could say that, because when somebody is kind of virtue signaling for somebody else, you always run into that problem where they take it far more seriously than the person would have received it directly. because in their own mind, they have this kind of twisted understanding of what's in the other person's mind. When in fact, that person might laugh their ass off over the joke. They're like, I find that the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like not even in the least offended by it. So it's a good rule in life is to never take offense for somebody else.
I might be kind of prejudiced against HR directors, though.
I think a lot of people are. In fact, you know, HR directors are wonderful comic material because they're absurd in many cases. I mean, they're just the kind of things that an HR person has to do is just really funny. And you can point to movies like Office Space and other things like that, where just the jokes just are super simple and they're easy because the HR director is having to deal with all these different people with different viewpoints and people getting butthurt and upset about different things. And then there's company policies to try to say, well, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. And then people are trying to twist those company policies to say, well, that person did this in this situation, or I received it that way. And those are the kind of things that, unfortunately, you cannot prevent how somebody receives something. And that's the challenge. And I think as a communicator, that's a real challenge, is threading the needle with something that is funny, but
You said but.
yeah, Beavis and Butthead. And that's the problem. You can't listen to stuff like that right before you come on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because that's
Or South Park
Well, and that's how I got canceled. I was listening to some podcast and they were going off about this or that, and I won't go into the details of it, but it just came out and it was part of a joke. And these were all 20-somethings. And these folks they couldn't know comedy if it slapped them in the face. And the older guys, men and women in the crowd, were chuckling, and the younger ones were horrified, and it's just like, and it was one of those things where there was an African-American in the crowd, and it was kind of a African-American joke, and I was born in Africa, and so I like to tell African-American jokes and things like that, and people look at me, you're a white boy. And I'm pretty sure the African-American guy was totally fine, and we were connected and having a good time. And it was the white 20-somethings that were fresh out of college.
Offended for the other guy that wasn't offended.
They thought, oh my God, he can't ever come back here again. So it's like, okay, I've got plenty of other work to do. So
Yep. Yeah, and I did my 23andMe test. I found out a lot of stuff, about different relatives that I could probably have a whole bunch of podcasts about.
Yeah.
But I am part Senegalese, so
nice.
Sub-Saharan African.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I was born in Sub-Saharan Africa, so I claim citizenship to Nigeria, even though I don't have it officially. But
okay, yeah, good. Birthright,
birthright citizenship. I pretty much, I could have done that actually, but at this point in the game, Nigeria is not the greatest place for a white person or a Christian. Either one of those things, probably not a good thing to be in Nigeria at the moment, but hopefully they'll figure out their problems.
All right. Well, I can't wait to go to Nigeria and figure all that stuff out myself and go to the land of the birth of the Bill Brooks.
That's right.
So let's see. We just have a couple of more minutes left here. And let's see. So shall we hereby uncancel ourselves?
Yeah.
And then Dave Chappelle. And maybe we'll do this again next year and uncancel somebody else.
Yeah, find somebody else to uncancel. That sounds great.
So if you're out there, you're in the solar industry, and you've been canceled by somebody that shouldn't have canceled you, we're going to uncancel you.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. In the name of Gino Espino.
Absolutely.
Our friend. Okay. And so just for the last couple of minutes that we have here, or just for a minute, maybe tell us about the 2026 National Electrical Code and the 2029 NEC.
Yeah, super quick. 26 code is going to be out in the next week or so. It's getting ready to hit the streets. There's definitely some good things in it, kind of progressing in PCS stuff, power control systems. That's probably some of the most important things. And then the 2029 code is coming up. They're actually opening it up for proposals next month, of all things, for the 2029 code. It'll be the longest code cycle because they're planning on completely revising the structure of the code. The only way you're going to find anything in the National Electrical Code and out of the 2029 code is by searching it with a search engine, because I won't have a clue where anything is, much less anybody who doesn't work with this stuff every day.
So all the numbering is just going to be completely different. No 690, no 705. So how long do you think it'll take me to forget all that stuff?
Well, your brain is probably going to say, well, this used to be the old 705.12, whatever, It's going to do that.
Do you have any idea what the number is going to be for
Absolutely
anything?
not.
Or
Nobody
maybe it'll be
knows.
letters?
No, they're gonna increase it to like 25 chapters.
Wow.
So we're gonna be up around 18, I think.
Wow.
So it's going to be quite a few chapters, and we'll see how it all pans out. But nobody really knows how it's going to go. I mean, there's some basic outlines that have been put out there so far, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of concrete that is yet to be even mixed.
Okay. All right. Well, any last words?
I don't think so. I think live long and prosper. How about that?
All right. The Vulcan Manifesto, live long and prosper. So thanks for listening, and just a reminder that we are recording live from the Power Up Live Pro Studio presented by TerraHive. Thanks to RE Plus and Suncast Media for hosting us. And thanks Bill Brooks for talking to me, and thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. To find out more, go to SolarSEAN.com and get yourself NABCEP certified so you could be NABCEP-y. Woo!